we'll speak on the topic facade and aesthetics of buildings. I'll cover the top thing in the following topics. First, let's see what facade as such is. Then we'll see the evolution and the changing phases of facades. And then we'll see the facade and its functions through some case studies. Now coming to facade. What exactly is facade? The very word facade literally means face in French. A building's facade is actually the front of a building and its face. So it is also the one which showcases the architect's artistic impression and brings out the concept of the building as such. Thus, it provides a great opportunity to play around and display the design skills and artistic talents of the designer. Now, let's see the evolution of these facades, starting from the vernacular architecture. The word vernacular means native. So, initially, how were buildings built? They were built by locally available materials, by the traditional methods of construction. There was not big planning or anything as such, but they evolved very naturally. So, the exteriors of the building, they depicted the period, the style, the material that was used and the structural system of the era. And mostly the materials used were local or regional and always unified with the structure and was a cohesive and mutually inclusive with the design as such. So, the work of this time reflects a rich diversity of India's climate, locally available materials and the intricate variation in social customs and craftsmanship. A typical example of vernacular architecture is the traditional houses of Rajasthan, where we can see the projecting jharokas and chhajjas which provide shade to the facades. We also see the intricate stone jalis which really controls the heat by the texture of their surfaces. And we also see very big blank walls with very small openings which are placed in the direction of the dust storms. And these are usually characterized by narrow streets so that the building shadows over each other. Another fine example is the houses that are built in the northeast. These are built with the bamboo, which is locally grown and locally available material. And these houses are usually characterized by hip roofs and high plinths in order to combat the heavy monsoons and the frequent earthquakes that are characteristic to these areas. Now, after the vernacular architecture came the colonial architecture. With the colonial architecture, we saw a lot of Gothic and English features in the elevational of the buildings. So, though they brought in all these features, but they still really protected the cultural values and the material made a regional context. They used dressed tones. They also used, in terms of English and Gothic features, we saw more of roof overhangs, arched openings, domes, floral motifs, etc. etc. So, the building function was reflected definitely in the exterior of the building. A typical example is the Victoria Memorial in Kolkata. So, this was one of the very early buildings of colonial architecture. It was more inspired by Taj Mahal. So, this building was built by Makrana marble. So, we see that Indo-Sasanic style and a mixture of British and Mughal elements in these elevations. And extensive also motifs and carvings were also used in these buildings. The next era of colonial architecture was the Gateway of India. We see a combination of Hindu and Muslim architectural styles. So this gateway is also built of local yellow basalt stone. The culmination of the colonial architecture can be seen in the Lutyens' Delhi. Lutyens' architecture is noted for its versatility and range of innovation along with the traditional lines. So there was a touch of axiality, symmetry and the size reflected in the Rashtriya Bhavan. They were characterized by this grandeur of scale, simplicity of geometric forms, and they also had this influence of Greek, especially Doric or Roman details and dramatic use of columns and a preference for blank walls. So we also see the neoclassical style of architecture with a touch of Mughal, and mostly they were built of the yellow sandstones, which was again a local available material. So, with the post-independent era, RCC became a very popular building material. So this era also came with the adage form follows function. So the function of the building became very, very important, and everything was an outcome or in response to functionalism. So a typical example is the Punjab Haryana High Court, where we see this high columns, which is a real entry to the judges, senior judges, and it has got 6 smaller courts and the 2 larger courts on either side. So the function of the building was really explicit in the facade of the structure as such. The second example is the Sri Ram Center for Performing Arts, where the auditorium or the hall is in the center in the cylindrical form and the allied facilities on the top and sides in the rectangular structure. Then we entered into an era of modernism. So with modernism, why modernism came to being is with the introduction of the new bylaws, because of the changing lifestyles, because of urbanization, because of the pressure on the land, there was a change in the skyline from low-rise to high-rise. So we here see a use of machinery and new materials came into being. So the entire streets were characterized by shopping malls, multiplexes, restaurants, cafes. These only dominated the street lines, which were characterized by high-tech materials like aluminium, glass, and etc. Slowly, we stepped into an era of globalization. In these days, this era saw the patronage of non-resident Indians and multinational companies who want to rebuild India exactly the way most advanced countries were built. So there were a wave of architectural styles emerged that reflected the age of globalization. Almost all cities from Gurgaon to Mumbai to Calcutta to Chennai, all that lies had a similar type of buildings, so-called modern buildings, which had extensive use of structural glazing and aluminium cladding. So to say that these buildings could be anywhere in India or any part of the world as such. So it is very sad that they were just mere skins drawn over the building with total disregard to the climatic conditions, local and regional context, energy efficiency, etc. So these exteriors give a global character, nothing more than that. So these are some of the buildings in Gurgaon. Especially these buildings came up in a time when there were long power cuts in the residential areas, so much so that people preferred to come and work in the offices overtime, not because of anything else, but because there was air-conditioned spaces and conducive environments, because of the long power cuts in their homes. So with these sort of experiences, we did learn that the meaning development to the developed countries is a step towards prosperity or step beyond prosperity, whereas for developing countries like us, it is a step towards sustainability. That there was a great awakening, and with this there were also bodies like Griha and IGBC who encouraged the design of sustainable buildings and who also gave accreditation to such buildings. So what is sustainability? Sustainability is the practice of increasing the efficiency with which the buildings and their site use and harvest energy, water and materials so that it protects and restores human health and the environment. So as we move towards designing sustainable buildings, the designing of buildings became more scientific based. The very siting, envelope, orientation and design and development of buildings being based on simulation through softwares for sun path analysis, daylight analysis, shadow analysis and so on and so forth through green building consultants. Now, the facade not only integrates the architectural context but also play a key role in the building performance as such. The design of facade thus became very highly complex and an area of specialization. There was an emergence of so-called facade consultants. So, now we'll see what are the major functions, why is facade so important and what are its functions. Apart from adding expressiveness to and main functions of a facade are, one of the main role is that it should eliminate the ingress of water into the building. Second, it should control the air permeability to the building. It should also resist to wind actions and wind pressure. Fourth, it should also provide thermal and acoustic insulation to the inhabitants of the building. Fifth, it should also control the solar heat gain and daylight. And last but not the least, it should protect the image, and the material selection should be such that it is economical, viable, regional and green. So, with so many functions, the facade design itself has become very, very important. So, a facade designer has to strike a balance between efficiency, that is thermal performance, and aesthetics. So, we'll see what are major factors that need to be considered in the facade designing. First and foremost is the functionality. Second is the type of materials and their durability, ease of installation and maintenance, the aesthetics, the cost, the resistance to corrosion and other chemicals, timelines, lighting, thermal, acoustic and fire resistance, maintenance. So these are some of the criteria that are to be considered in the facade designing as such. In nowadays, there are very many innovative facades like energy producing algae phase, light responsive facades, smog eating facade, operable skin facade and so on and so forth. Many of them are gaining great prominence these days. There are also environment conscious facades, wherein the rooftops and building facades are two areas in the building envelope that can be used to generate electricity by use of solar panels, which will again reduce expenditure on electricity bills and also help reduce the carbon footprint. In cooler climates, these facades can be designed in a way that they can get maximum sunlight so as to decrease the expenditure on heating and cooling, and also provides health benefits to the people by way of exposure to sunlight. Last but not the least, facade lighting. Facade lighting is also very, very important. It is not only to provide security but also plays a key role in expressing the architectural and artistic impression of the building as such. A good facade lighting should have the following aspects. One is, it should be aesthetic. Second is, it should be very functional. And third is, it should be very efficient. In terms of, it should be energy efficient and it should reduce the amount of wasted light. Now we will move on to the case studies. One of the case studies is INFOSYS Limited, Hyderabad. Here we will discuss only the facade. This facade consists of a daylight pane, that is like sort of a ventilator above, and we call something called a light shelf. This light shelf, you will see, is a wooden panel which extends to the inside significantly so that the light can be brought in to a greater depth to the interiors of the building. How? By this surface, which is white and painted white, reflects the light that is received through the ventilators and it is reflected into the interiors of the building. Not only that, the glasses that are used are also smart glazing in this, which is a DGU glass. Second is the study of ITC Green Center, Gurgaon. If you see ITC's Green Center, Gurgaon, it has a massive ceiling in the atrium space which provides a glare-free natural light which penetrates deep into the interior spaces, thus avoiding the use of artificial lighting. The ITC Gurgaon, if we see, the ITC Gurgaon has a glazing in the western side. The double glaze allows the diffuse sunlight to pass through, at the same time re-radiate the solar radiation back. It is located in the western side because the sun's rays is highly radiant when it is setting in the evenings. On the other side, it has a DGU glass which reflects the radiation and allows only the light to pass through. This sort of a glass is used where there is an eye contact which is required at this level with the exteriors of the building. And the DGU glass consists of the two glasses with a space of vacuum or special gas filled in between. Now coming to ITC Green Center, Gurgaon. This is characterized of the use of traditional jalis. These jalis are lattice wall. They prevent the glare and heat while ensuring adequate daylighting, view and also gives an aesthetic appeal. And they also have greenery planted next to this wall so that the rainwater really seeps in through these openings and through which these plants get nourished. The third case study is the RAJKUMARI RATNAVATI Girls' School at JAISALMER. It's one of the finest examples. The building, first of all, is built with hand-carved JAISALMER sandstone. Most of the craftsmen were fathers of the girl children who are studying in this school. The building as such is ellipse-shaped building which is oriented to filter out the sunlight and have maximum airflow into the building. It also uses passive solar cooling strategy to light the classrooms and the computer center in the building. If you see, it has got a central courtyard which acts as a water harvesting facility with cistern in the middle and surrounded by jali all around. And we also see the existing native trees being preserved. Here the stairs and the ramp are a play area which is hidden by a large jali and a solar panels which form a canopy which powers the interior of the building. The fourth case study is the Pearl Academy of Jaipur. In this we see the jali facade which blocks the direct sunlight and help control the heat gain. So it has got actually a double skin layer. The external thing consists of the jali facade. So there is a 1.2 meter wide space between the actual facade and this jali facade. The in between the two building skins is the 1.2 meters. The exterior walls actually acts as a buffer between the building and the surrounding. It acts as a shading device and as a thermal buffer as such. And what happens inside the building? There is a open courtyard which also has a water body which acts as a cooling agent. So the facade of the inside towards the courtyard is more open because of the cooled environment. So the recommendations are that more and more buildings can be undertaken to be planned as green buildings in MEMS, and also that these planning may be given sufficient time to conceptualize at the board stage itself so as to arrive at a realistic cost and have no problems once it is sanctioned. And as per the scales of accommodation, a cost of permanent finishes to be catered for at the board stage itself. These are a few recommendations. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patient hearing.